participants. My name is Phoebe and I will be joining you in our last breakout session. Now, the topic is workforce of the future. This is very relevant to these times. This workforce of the future looks at the possible worlds of work in the next decade to help you kickstart your thinking. Explore the increasing importance of digital HR, the skills most pertinent in the new work world, and the importance of managing a multi-generational workforce from young millennials to the silver generation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, who has 2 decades of experience in a range of HR areas. He's the head of People, Performance, and Culture for Vietnam and Cambodia at KPMG Asia Pacific, and has led the firm to be recognized as one of the best places to work in Vietnam in a number of prestigious external rankings. Ladies and gentlemen, KPMG Asia Pacific's Head of People, Performance, and Culture. A round of applause for Mr. Paul Huynh.
Thank you so much, Phoebe, for that really warm introduction.
Good afternoon,
wonderful
Sir Paul.
to be here.
Thank you so much for being with us. And it is our pleasure to have you. And I'm pretty sure our participants are looking forward to hear more from you. So I wouldn't hold you any longer. Go ahead, start with your presentation.
Thank you, Phoebe, and it's great to be here as part of the Asian Business Conference, and pleased to be talking about something that I'm really passionate about, the workforce and the workplace of the future. Let me just share my screen so that you can see the presentation which I've prepared, and we will be able to kick off. All right, well, hopefully all of you in the audience can see the presentation. As I said, it's a real honor to be here on the call with you all, sharing with you about this topic on workforce of the future and what the future is going to look like. I think it's no shock to anyone who's joining this session that we are going through a real fundamental transformation in the way that we work. The future of work and the workforce is really facing dramatic changes driven largely by technology, globalization, demographics, social values, generational expectations, and of course, the impacts of COVID in terms of the people experience. So the question really is, what will the future look like? And more importantly, what can we do as organizations and as leaders to really drive, and navigate this intersection of these competing dynamics at play, which we're seeing? What's clear, though, is that this is not a time to sit back and wait for the events to unfold. To be prepared for the future, we first need to understand it. And let's start then for us to look at the drivers, or what I call the challenges of this shift that has had such a effusive impact on the talent landscape. First, of course, related to what we're all experiencing in terms of COVID at the moment. In a recent survey conducted by KPMG with leading CEOs, more than 45% of them predicted that a return to normal would not happen in 2021. Hybrid working, vaccine rollouts, and geopolitical issues all make this really challenging. We're also going to be living so much longer than our parents ever did. So lifespans have increased dramatically. So that means we're working longer, and we're not going to be able to retire when our parents did. Really, many of us will be working probably into our 70s, because of both financial necessity, but also our improved health. So with that landscape, we need to think about our careers, but also how do we continue to learn going forward? The other challenge we know is that automation within the business environment is happening at such a rapid pace of change. And we have all of this routine and mundane work that are being done by humans currently replaced by systems and robots and smart machines. And this trend we know will continue with the focus on efficiency and cost as companies continue to drive their change with respect to automation. And that leads to this next challenge you see on the slide, which is, with the rise of automation and AI technology happening at the moment, a report from IBM recently tells us that this is equivalent to about 120 million workers, which means that you have this whole bunch of workers that may need to be retrained or upskilled to help drive their business forward. And in some respects, this transformation and the increasingly mobile work environment that we're operating in has fueled this freelance economy where many employees, mostly millennials, will spend no longer than 16 months on average with any employer. So as we drive for growth and to seize the opportunities ahead, you have this talent attraction and talent retention challenge as well that needs to be front of mind. And then finally, the demographic shifts and the upheavals have made the workforce a lot more diverse than ever before, with the aging population and then important issues around gender, race, and sexual orientation all being thrust into the spotlight. And all of these areas will definitely have an impact on business models, talent ambitions, and how you frame your employee value proposition to further promote inclusion and diversity so that we're catering to all of the different important demographics. And this is certainly not an extensive list by any means. What you're seeing on the screen is really just the tipping point. But once we start to understand the challenges in front of us, we can also start to recognize the opportunities of getting on the front foot of some of these burning issues. The other part of the problem, and what you can see here, is that we've all seen the headlines, and the headlines attract clicks and sell newspapers, but they don't always provide that balanced view of the topic at hand. And so that's been my experience with the future of work. And in the research that I've done on my own, most of the media coverage I've seen on this subject really focuses on the rise of robots. So everything from robots will steal our jobs to automation unrest to millennials ruining the workforce. But this is such a complex topic, and that headlines don't always give you that full picture and really help you to understand the scale of the human element of this important discussion. But certainly technology will almost certainly play a very critical role, and there's no doubt about that. And according to this report that you see from the World Economic Forum, many of the emerging technologies that you hear about today will start to reach a tipping point by 2025. The council surveyed more than 800 executives and experts from the technology sector to share their respective timelines for when some of these technologies would start to become mainstream. And so from the survey results, the council identified 21 defining moments, all of which they predict will occur by 2025. And here's a look at some of the technological shifts that you can expect to see during the next couple of years. And remember that this survey was conducted back in 2018. So some of these are already happening. So you look at people buying clothes, from the internet. That's already happening. Driverless cars, Google and and the like are, is already happening. So this is quite scary to think about, but it really shows you the pace of change that is happening right now on our doorstep. And this change and what the future of work, I think, really asks us to consider, I believe, are some of the biggest challenges and questions of our age and our generation. So what is the critical role of learning? How do we re-engineer work and tasks? How can we promote agility and adapt to the new tools and technologies to reshape the way that we have our employees do work? And how can you maintain your corporate culture and values in the midst of this ongoing hybrid working that we find ourselves in? So these are all of the critical questions that we need to ask. And while certainly technology will play a crucial role, I think too many times, we focus too much on the role that automation is predicted to have on jobs in the workplace, and the emerging role that robots, and smart machines will play. But the real story, I think, is far more complex, and really is less about technological innovation and advancement, because that's already happening and is going to happen regardless. But it's going to be more about the manner in which us humans decide to use that technology and really adapt and use it to our advantage. And in looking then at the human element, so if we take it back to a human element and an employee lens to really determine what is the best workforce strategy, and how best to prepare and train and upskill our workforce, I came across another World Economic Forum report, which asked chief human resources officers and strategy officers from some of the leading global employers, what the current shifts mean, specifically for employment, skills, and recruitment. You can already see some noticeable shifts in the last several years with respect to what employees and organizations need if they are to continue to thrive in this fourth industrial revolution. Priority is going to be on creativity, which becomes, as you can see in 2021, one of the top 3 skills workers will need. With this avalanche of new products, new technologies, new ways of working, workers are going to have to become more creative in order to benefit from some of these changes. Robots may help us get to where we want faster, but they can't be as creative as humans yet. Critical and predictive analytical skills will also come to the fore, as you can see. So the ability to create deeper meaning from information and from the data that we're getting coming in, or what we call sense-making skills, skills that really help create unique insights and that will help evolve your decision-making in a much more effective manner, is really going to be critical. And then on the flip side, whereas negotiation and flexibility were high on the list of skills in 2015, in 2021, they will begin to drop from the top 10 as machines, using some of the masses of data, begin to make some of those negotiation decisions for us. And in fact, another survey done by the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on the future of software and society shows that people expect artificial intelligence machines to actually be part of a company's board of directors by 2026. So take that in. Similarly, quality control and active listening, which were considered core skills in 2015, will disappear completely from the top 10. And emotional intelligence, which featured only at number 10 in 2015, rises in terms of the top skills, and will become increasingly more relevant as people are required to be more aware of themselves and more aware of the impact that they have on others. And the necessity that we as individuals, the necessity is that we as individuals really need to ensure that we continue to connect with others in a much more deep, direct and meaningful way, is going to be critical. So from this list, you can start to see the gist of what I'm talking about and the type of skills which will really become critical. And it reminds us that for all of the advances in technology, there are just some skills that robots will never be able to replicate. And those are the ones which you can see are going to become increasingly important in the workplace of the future. we have another opportunity when you look at the workforce dynamic, and that is for the first time in the history, we have 5 generations coexisting amongst our organization today. And what we know is that they all have different unique needs in terms of the workplace experience. And, you know, while this can be celebrated in terms of diversity, this can also pose a whole myriad of challenges in terms of the way that we engage our employees, but also how do we communicate and collaborate with each other and with our colleagues, you know, in a way that helps us to reach our strategic goals. And what's clear, though, is that the future of work needs to be inclusive. So for all of the challenges that a diverse workforce presents, we also know that diversity breeds happiness, creativity, agility, and also helps the business become more profitable. And what you can see on the slide here is actually the makeup of KPMG Asia Pacific today and what we predict it will look like in 2025. And one of the pictures that I try to paint for all of the leaders at KPMG when they look at this is that in the next 4 years, we will have more than 70% of our workforce made up of millennials and Gen Z. And, you know, quite often I hear our partners say, oh, this generation is so entitled. They want this, they want that. And it's just this generation. You can say that all you want, but when they make up more than 70% of your workforce, they have a voice, they have a big voice, and they want to be heard, and they want to be included. So we've got to look at, you know, our employee, you know, generational makeup right now across the business. And I really believe that our ability to tap into the unique qualities of each of the generations, you know, that we have in our workforce, you know, will really help drive business results in terms of the workforce of the future. And the other important part, you know, we know is the really the acceleration of remote and hybrid working, and largely as a result of the pandemic. I say acceleration because many companies, including KPMG, were already going down that journey pre-COVID, but COVID has really helped to demystify, I think, the process of working from home and working remotely. But I think by and large, businesses that have managed COVID as best as they can in terms of their employees have really seen some great benefits in terms of increase in productivity, lowered business operating costs, reduced carbon footprint, and finally, and really importantly, an increase in employee engagement. At the same time, workplaces are being designed to look more like homes. Homes are providing a place to work, and cafes are becoming increasingly a natural extension of work. So therefore, I believe there's been a real blurring of the lines between geographical cities, buildings, workplaces, and homes. And this blurring of the lines between work and home and the overarching need for people to continue to have connectivity, you know, poses a whole new set of challenges for us as employers in terms of this workforce of the future. And I think we need to really think carefully about how we create and foster this sense of belonging amongst an increasingly mobile and diverse workforce. And these considerations are really important because I think it has an impact on how we live, how we work, and how we, you know, as leaders need to lead. And at KPMG, for many of our member firms, we're really wrestling with this right now as we design our own workplaces of the future. And I think that the opportunity is really there for our leaders who really embrace the changes required to remain competitive and attractive. And I said we're grappling with this ourselves because, as you can see, this is KPMG's Workforce of the Future guiding principles and our approach to hybrid and agile working at KPMG, which is really based on these 5 core concepts and themes in terms of balancing individual, employee, and business needs, the inherent importance of promoting two-way trust between staff and leaders, making agile, a core part of the firm's normal day-to-day vocabulary, and making it real. The importance of balancing performance versus presence. So a real focus on outcomes rather than the physical need to be in the office. And finally, doubling down and enhancing employee and client communications during this uncertain and volatile time. This is the blueprint for KPMG's kind of workforce of the future guiding principles, and I hope it helps to share with all of our listeners here just some best practice examples from a firm such as KPMG. So really, in conclusion, and as the quote on this page suggests from Alvin Toffler, who is considered to be one of the leading futurists, this is a journey, and it requires all of us to really adopt this mindset of learn, unlearn, and relearn as we navigate really the workforce, not of the future, but of today and tomorrow. So, the future really is now. So, yes, the acceleration of robots, cognitive technologies, artificial intelligence in the workplace is most certainly going to play a huge and pivotal role. But lost in all the noise, I think, is a recognition that the future of work also involves a much broader set of issues, many of which focus on the individuals who lie at the heart of our strategic priorities and corporate vision. And that's our people, our employees. So, we need to be looking at all of the things that I talked about today, the evolution of talent, mobility, training and retraining your current staff, attracting talent, looking at the skills of today and tomorrow, and given the impact, speed, and the pervasiveness of these developments, it's time for us to move beyond the headlines that you saw earlier and have conversations that are more focused on what we can do as leaders, and as a leadership team to help not only to manage, but really ideally, how can we benefit from these changes today and in the coming years so that your organization can start to create results that they've never seen before and maintain the competitive advantage. So Phoebe, that's all I really wanted to share with our participants during the conference, and I might turn it back to you for questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul Huynh. Wow, such an insightful presentation you have there. And I've been receiving a lot of questions from our participants. You're right, though. You're totally correct. Now that we are facing a much bigger challenge with the pandemic, there's also a big shift in the workforces of the future. And I believe that we have to adapt to these changes if we need to survive in our businesses, in your companies. And thank you so much for sharing the practices that you have in your company. It was such a very helpful insight, and I'm pretty sure it will guide also our participants. Managing the workforce in the new normal is obviously different from just a year ago. With the pandemic, with the geopolitical shifts, and the migration to digital native workforces mean that the workforce has changed hugely. Now I have questions here for you, Mr. Paul, if it's okay with you. I have a couple of questions from our participants. Now, here's one from Michael, actually. He's more interested to know about the biggest motivators for the future workforce. Now, what will be the biggest motivators for the future workforce, especially that you have noted in the earliest part of your presentation that 16 months is the average time for an employee to stay in his or her specific or same job or organization. So what can be the motivating factors for that particular employee to be interested in that particular organization?
Yeah, thanks Phoebe, and thanks Michael for the question. I love I love this question, and I think it's all about, how do we navigate this changing landscape and help to bring out the very best in our people, in our workforce. And I believe when you crunch it all up, I think it comes down to three critical elements from the employee lens. First is include me. I think if it isn't clear already, this generation wants to have a voice at the table and to feel that what they do really makes a difference. So the first, I think, is include me. The second is inspire me. I think we need to continue to build that social and cultural fabric, and it's going to be through a combination of purpose and autonomy, which I believe are seen as some of the most important ingredients if you want to inspire and engage your employees, is providing with that sense of purpose and meaning and autonomy and flexibility. And finally, it's about grow me. So I think gone are the days of the typical corporate ladder where it's about climbing the rungs to the next level, or or assuming, like I say at KPMG, that everyone wants to become a partner. That's not the case anymore. We need to help employees navigate non-traditional career pathways, which may not necessarily be up, but could be sideways or even sometimes downways as well. But then also provide them with some of the accompanying learning experiences and pathways to support their current and their next role and opportunity. So, Michael, I hope that answers your question.
That is very true. You know what? We cannot always say that this generation is very much entitled, but rather we should always adapt to the personalities and characteristics of these, or the character of this generation. Now, the things that you have noted, that particular thing that you have noted, to which it drives the workforce or the management to hear the voices and to inspire these people, means very much to this generation. So thank you very much. That was such a beautiful answer, Mr. Paul. Now, leaning on to the next question, it's about the educational system. How will these trends on skills and future work affect the current educational system?
Yeah, thanks, Phoebe. In short, I think there's a huge impact, and just like organizations, educational and academic institutions, I think, have a really critical role to play. Like businesses, they also need to quickly adapt to help shape tomorrow's workforce. And I think it's really going to be about their role in terms of future-proofing the learning and the careers of their students, through helping them to be more competent in, a broad range of transferable future skills. So the ones that I talked about during the presentation, but critically, creativity, critical and analytical thinking, I think, are going to be really important, for educational systems, to really help to promote. It'll be about embedding technology and digital skills into their curriculum, right from the get-go. And making that a core part, I think, of their of the learning curriculum. And then finally, I think professors and teachers will need to adapt their classroom teaching styles and their teaching methods to better engage with students, and with a real focus on experiential learning, so real hands-on learning, so that we really help to future-proof the students so that they're ready for this workforce, of the future.
Mr. Huynh, you have noted a lot of factors to prepare the students for the workforce of the future. Now, just a follow-up question on the answer that you delivered earlier. Where should universities focus on the factors that you have stated? Where should universities focus on so that they can prepare these students, they can prepare the academe, adapt and prepare to the workforce of the future?
Yeah, that's a good. I would say focus on all of them, but I think one of the critical focus areas for universities. And I'm an advisor to one of the leading universities here in Vietnam. And the one thing that I say to RMIT University Vietnam, for example, is they need to make sure that they're partnering with industry and with corporates, and make this a real collaborative effort between academia working in tandem with industry to tackle the opportunities and the challenges that lie ahead, so that you've got this really holistic kind of framework that is that works for the betterment of the students, for industry, and really society as a whole. So when you've got universities working side by side, collaboratively in tandem with industry, I believe that it's a win-win for everyone. So that would be my advice for universities in terms of focus areas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul. Now we have another question from Sandra. It's about diversity and inequality. How will these trends affect the widening inequality, especially now that this has been a pressing concern, even to this day, 2021, we're still talking about diversity and equality in the workforce or workplace?
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. Another great question. I think absolutely, as we navigate this, I think, as we look at the trends that we talked about today, be it technology, skills, demographics, there's a real positive effect, I think, in terms of some of the unparalleled benefits and opportunities that lie ahead. But as the OECD, report has highlighted, as well, that this can also exacerbate inequality, particularly in terms of wage and income inequality. And it's something that we need to have in the back of our minds. So the highly skilled workers who possess many of the future skills will benefit greatly. But the risk is how it affects and impacts a large majority of those that we consider low-skilled or middle-skilled workers who are performing some of the routine manual and cognitive tasks that are ultimately going to be automated or replaced. And I think that if we don't first understand and address that early on, there's a real potential to polarize the labor force even further, with less demand for the middle skilled workers, and then it only intensifies the wage inequality issue. So I think it's important for us to understand that that there's going to be the need for us to address the gaps early on, and then what are the initiatives and programs that we can do to help some of the low skilled and middle skilled workers make sure that they can keep up with the pace of change.
I totally agree. And I also believe that we should also take into consideration that the government should do something about the wage and inequality issues in a certain country. Now,
Absolutely.
For you, lastly, just one last question, just a follow-up question, a very beautiful answer you've given earlier. How should the governments address the effect of this trend on the wage or income and opportunity inequality?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phoebe. And you're absolutely right. I think the governments can and should, play a critical role, as well as leading firms within countries. Governments and leading firms, I think, need to spot opportunities and initiate programs to reduce some of the barriers, particularly around, firstly, investing in skills programs, I think, that enable workers to perform new tasks over a lifetime of changing work environments. I think gone are the days that we can look at, upskilling at, people once and for all. I think it's going to be around, adapting and changing for the whole of their lives. Secondly, I think it's supporting people through work and life transitions, and including providing them with access to social protections during some of those critical transitions, because I think that there are going to be moments where because of the rapid changes, we need to allow people the opportunities to really transition successfully. And I do think that there's a critical role that governments can play in helping with some of those transitions, particularly from social protection. And then thirdly, I think it's around strengthening some of the efforts to bridge some of the technological divides within the country, particularly, for some of the emerging countries like Vietnam, providing equal access, to things like internet and computers, not just for those that are in the cities, but also for those in the provinces and in rural areas as well. So for the poor, and also for those maybe who are older as well, the older generations who are not used to, not used to it. So, I think trying to provide the bridge to, some of those critical access points is going to really help strengthen, some of the divide.
Wow, thank you very much. Actually, I noted earlier that that was my last question, but this question that just came in from Steve is actually very interesting, and I can't help but ask this one. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard in your presentation earlier that in 2026, AI will become part of the board of directors. Am I right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one was very interesting. So this question particularly is inclined to that particular statement of yours. With the perceived challenges, zeroing in technology, which will most likely create digital workforce with digital minds, threatening to replace human minds, with the prevalence of robotic process automation, or RPA, and of course, artificial intelligence, and also taking into consideration the pandemic economy accelerating the adoption of digital technologies, allowing more work done outside the traditional workspaces, which is also one of the changes that we have to adapt nowadays, with more freelance and independent contractors. In your opinion, Mr. Huynh, what could possibly be the most challenging function of management towards the future of work and workforce? So actually, it's more tackling on the challenging functions of management.
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. It's a complex, it's a complex one, and I would say that one of the challenging areas that I'm working on at the moment, and my advice for those that are listening is obviously many of the firms have human resources functions already, but one of the emerging I think one of the emerging kind of areas of human resources is around workforce shaping itself. And so for those that are on the call, I would really ask the leaders, if you haven't already done so, is to really invest in this whole concept of workforce shaping, and which is really all about looking at what is the work, what are the skills, what are the jobs that you are going to be requiring really in the next 1 to 3 years. So kind of, doing some predictive analysis, and then workforce shaping means that then you work backwards to really come up with a firm strategy then to look at things such as office footprint, to look at hybrid working, documentation of policies, but then also critically, what are the skills that are going to be needed in the next 1 to 3 years that you need to start training or retraining your current workforce now? Which ones do you need to get through organic growth or inorganic. I think all of those things are considerations that workforce shaping requires you to do. And so my advice would be, if you haven't already embarked on that with your HR team, that would be one area that I would really encourage all the leaders joining to really invest in. And that's looking at workforce shaping and the trends that are really going to impact your business, in the future.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul Huynh, everybody.
Thanks, Phoebe.
You.
Thanks, everyone.
That's it. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights. The next couple of years is going to be interesting, and it's going to be critical for the workforce of the future. But of course, with your help, the insights that you've given us, I'm pretty sure it will help our participants as well in their respective companies. So thank you for joining us in this session.
Thank you. Thank you, Phoebe. Thanks, Asian Business Conference.
Thank you.
Good evening.